afternoon. Today we are going to do a presentation on a case at Modbury Shopping Center versus Ansel. But first of all, let me introduce the four members in our group. My name is Cornelia, and the second member is Depali, the third member is Yisang, and last but not least is Aftab. The topic of our presentation today is the case of Modbury Triangle Shopping Center versus Ansel. And this case was set aside by passing the judgment on behalf of the defendant by saying that the occupier was held not liable for the respondent injury, and the claim went in favor of the shopping center. Hence, for the next couple of minutes, I will explain the case a little bit further. Okay, so let's talk about the fact of the case. In this case, the defendant is the owner of the Modbury Triangle Shopping Center, and the plaintiff, Mr. Ansel, was employed by the video store in the shopping center. The video shop faced a large outdoor car park. The car park belonged to the shopping center. The video store was open until 10 p.m., and the light of the car park automatically switched off at the time. The plaintiff left the workplace at 10:30 p.m. on Sunday, when the car park's light had been turned off. Three unidentified individuals subsequently attacked him. One of the individuals was armed by a baseball bat, and the plaintiff was badly injured. So under the lease, the lighting in a common area like a car park was provided at the discretion of the appellant, and the tenant paid the proportion of the cost 2 years before the practice had been to leave the lights until 10 p.m. The manager of the video store actually had been requested that the light to stay on until 10:15 p.m., but this request has ceased about 12 months before the attack, and ever since, the light had been turned off exactly at 10 p.m. Therefore, the plaintiff sued the shopping center in negligence for failing to exercise reasonable care and leaving the lights on. Okay, so let's move on to the issue in this case. This case revolved around occupier liability for the criminal conduct of the third party. It focused on whether and when one person owed another duty to take responsible care to protect those lawfully on its land against the criminal conduct of the third party or not. Now we're going to talk about the reason and decision of this case. Once the action was heard on a trial, the initial ruling was found that the correspondent and the judges were rejected and the defendant argument. Because the act of the third party that was involved there can be no duty of care. They further added that the attack happened within the premises and the owner, he must be liable of the total security of people within it. Meanwhile, the judges also found there is a clear connection between the safeguard of the lighting of the common area being denied to the plaintiff and the attack. Therefore, the issue of causation, the full court agreed with the trial judges. However, the majority was quite skeptical of the claim that better lighting would prevent the attack, and the case appeared to be conducted on the basis that the defendant had not created or increased the risk of injury as a result of poor lighting. The court pointed out that this was not the case where the plaintiff claim was based on a physical condition of the car park. The example would be if he tripped over because of the absence of lighting, that's a different story, but rather this claim was based on a deliberate criminal action of the third party. Accordingly, the issue of liability for the omission, in particular liability for a criminal act of the third party. The majority held that the duty of the owner of the shopping center as occupier did not extend to taking precaution to prevent physical injury to the plaintiff by criminals. To determine whether the duty of care owed by occupier to those that enter their land, the proximity test was used, and it includes the physical, circumstantial, and causal proximity were used along the three stages, whether the damage was reasonably foreseeable or whether the relationship between the plaintiff and the defendant sufficiently proximate, and if so, was it fair, just, and reasonable to impose duty of care. Okay, so let me quote the statement made by Gleason CG. He stated that, quote, "In the absence of a special relationship, One person has no duty to prevent harm to another from the criminal conduct of the third party, even if the risk of such harm is foreseeable. Unquote. So, in conclusion, after taking into account and consideration from the hearing of the trial judges, the decision was passed as the occupier had no power to control the action of the attacker or the circumstances of the attack. Also, the occupier had no knowledge of the intended attack. Hence, the occupier was held not liable for plaintiff injury. The plaintiff injury was a deliberate attack by the offender, not because of the absence of lighting. And in addition, the occupier had not assumed responsibility for the defendant's safety and reasonably act on the basis. The respondent's employee would protect him, and as far as the occupier concerned, the respondent was in the same position as the other member of the public, and the occupier contribution to the respondent injury was negligible. And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for listening.